Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is sponsored by Friskies, who would like to tell your cats hi. Now, if that didn't get your cat's attention, there is one thing that always does the trick. Just pour some Friskies crunchy food in the bowl and you'll hear those paws come running. Works every time. With so many Friskies choices, you can always bring your cats running from their secret napping spots. There's always more to explore. See for yourself at Friskies.com or visit your local store.
Before we begin today, please note this episode includes discussions about sensitive topics such as cyberbullying, eating disorders, suicide, and mental health struggles, which may be distressing for some listeners. If you or someone you know needs support, please reach out to mental health professionals or contact the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 988. Okay, enjoy the show.
Imagine you're at a dinner party. You're relaxed. You may be enjoying a glass of wine when someone casually leans over and says, "Hey, I'd love to have every bit of data on your kid. What makes them laugh? What makes them cry? Habits, sleep patterns. What scares the heck out of them? Would you mind handing that over?" Would you say yes? I don't think so. But here's the thing. We already do. Every day. We just don't realize it. And it's not happening at dinner parties. It's happening online.
Exactly. And if you're a parent, like both of us, you've seen it firsthand. Kids are glued to their phones, their tablets. I am too. I mean, sometimes. But listen, with our children, maybe we think it's just a game, just a video. What could go wrong? It turns out everything. Especially when these algorithms that are out there designed by big tech are working against them.
Today we're diving into something parents are wrestling with across the world, keeping their kids safe online. You've heard about the dangers, cyberbullying, predators, and those endless rabbit holes of content that drive our kids deeper and deeper into isolation and anxiety. But what's being done about it?
We got the chance to talk about this with two United States senators who are working on that very problem. They're behind the Kids Online Safety Act, or KOSA, a bill they believe could turn the tide and finally hold big tech accountable for how their platforms affect children.
Senators Marsha Blackburn and Richard Blumenthal are two unlikely allies. Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, and Blackburn, a Republican from Tennessee. They're standing together to fight what might be the biggest threat our kids face today, their own digital identities.
Here's what's really happening. The internet was once seen as a tool for learning and connecting, right? And it's become a breeding ground for exploitation. Simple as that. And make no mistake, your children, our children, their very lives are on the line because these algorithms are changing the way they move through the world. This is a serious thing. They have become commodified. And that's what we're talking about.
Welcome to What the Hack, the true cybercrime podcast. I'm Adam Levin.
And I'm Beau Friedlander.
Over the next 2 weeks, we'll be diving into KOSA, exploring why this legislation is crucial, the stories behind it, and how it could reshape the online world for kids.
Before we get into the interview with Senators Blackburn and Blumenthal, let's take a moment to remember a conversation that we had recently, a story that shows just how high the stakes really are.
My son, Carson, was 16 years old, and he had just finished his sophomore year in high school. It was the pandemic, so the last 3 months were online from home. We encouraged him to get his first summer job, and he worked really hard to get one making pizzas.
Kristen Bride, Carson's mom, told us about how he had just come home from his first night of job training. He was happy, excited even.
really well.
He'd written his upcoming work schedule on the family calendar. Everything seemed normal. But that next morning, Kristen woke up to a nightmare.
The next morning, I woke up early. I walked by his room. The door was open. He wasn't there, but I absolutely thought nothing of it because sometimes he slept upstairs in the loft when he had a hard time sleeping. I looked down at my phone that was charging there in the kitchen and saw that there was a text message from Carson to myself, his dad, and his brother regarding a suicide. At that point, I jumped up and went running to the other side of the house, found that the garage door was cracked open, and found my beautiful son hanging from the ceiling. He had ended his life in the middle of the night while we slept.
It's a parent's worst nightmare. And what made this even more unbearable for Kristen was what she found out next. Carson had been the target of anonymous bullying on Snapchat through a third-party app called YOLO.
Was that Snapchat had allowed anonymous apps onto their back end, and those apps were called YOLO and LMK, which allowed kids to anonymously message each other and hide their identities. And so it was just one sign into Snapchat, and it encouraged kids to pose questions out there to start talking to each other. But the person doing that gets to see all the feedback from their friends. And Carson had a private account. So these were his high school classmates. These weren't people from around the world. So he would pose a question like, do you like my haircut, or that sort of thing? And he would get back, you're ugly, you're awful, that sort of thing. But he didn't know who it was coming from.
Over the 2 weeks before Carson's death, he received nearly 100 cruel and taunting messages.
And he even replied back and said, hey, it looks like you have a problem with me. Why don't you swipe up and identify yourself so we can talk things out in person? So here's a 16-year-old trying to reach out using his humanity to have that connection with a person and try to work it out, not through technology, but where there's ownership. And he was rejected. Of course, that person never swiped up and identified themselves.
Carson isn't alone. Kristen isn't alone. There are countless other families who face similar tragedies because of the toxic environment these platforms create. And it's not just about cyberbullying.
If you look at the history of anonymous apps over the last decade, every single time when marketed to teens, it leads to cyberbullying, typically a suicide, they shut down and a new one comes to market. This was preventable.
In response to these tragedies, Kristen and a group of other parents have banded together to advocate for greater accountability. At the heart of their fight is the Kids Online Safety Act, or KOSA.
KOSA stands for the Kids Online Safety Act, and the goal is to hold platforms accountable for their product. KOSA was introduced in May 2023 by Senators Blackburn and Senators Blumenthal. And there are a group of parents that have lost their children to online harms. You can find us on parentssos.org, and we have been advocating for KOSA for the last 2 years. The most important part of KOSA, and I think this really relates to what we were just talking about, is that it requires these companies to have a duty of care to our children to prevent and mitigate specific harms.
KOSA aims to curb the most dangerous aspects of online platforms, like algorithms that push harmful content to children, whether it's pro-suicide, pro-eating disorder, or sexual exploitation.
What we are finding that's happening is that kids that look up a healthy recipe, they get flooded with pro-eating disorder content. A boy that breaks up with a girlfriend and wants inspirational quotes suddenly gets fed pro-suicide content. The algorithms are sending them down really dark rabbit holes because the more drama, the more sensational, it keeps the kids online longer. And that's how they make their money.
KOSA may not be able to reverse what's already been done. It could make platforms think twice before putting profits over the safety of our children, or anyone for that matter.
They need to prioritize the safety of their young users over their profits. Unfortunately, it's going to take legislation to have them do that.
Kristen's story, like so many others, shows us why KOSA is so important. We've heard from so many people affected by the dark side of online platforms, like John DeMay, whose son Jordan was a victim of a sextortion scam that led to his tragic death. These stories are powerful reminders of why the fight for KOSA is so important and why real change is needed now.
In fact, after Kristen Wright spoke to us, she went to D.C. and she was successful. Now, as the bill makes its way through Congress, we turn to two senators leading the charge, Marsha Blackburn and Richard Blumenthal. Together, they've formed a bipartisan coalition to push this bill forward.
So after the break, our conversation with Senators Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee and Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut about KOSA, what it means, and how it could change the online world for the better.
This episode is brought to you by Nespresso Virtuo Coffee Machines. Ready to enjoy the bold flavors of barista-quality Nespresso iced coffee at home? Simply fill a glass with ice and press the brew button on your Virtuo Pop machine to enjoy rich double espressos roasted to stand up even when chilled. Refreshingly bold iced coffee. Refreshingly easy to make at home. Visit Nespresso.com to shop now.
Hey, this is Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast, here to help you make the most of your summer with Michelob Ultra, a superior light beer worth playing for. Play for it with the guys when you're competing to see who can sink more birdies on the golf course, because winning tastes even better with Ultra on the line. Play for Ultra. Fill your fridge with Michelob Ultra this summer. Enjoy responsibly. Copyright 2025 Anheuser-Busch Michelob Ultra Light Beer, St. Louis, Missouri.
Senators Blackburn and Blumenthal, thanks so much for talking with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Blackburn, let me start with you. We all know how addictive online life can be for minors. I have a 12-year-old son myself. I see it every day. How does the Kids Online Safety Act address the responsibility social media platforms have to protect children and ensure their well-being? Can you talk about how KOSA addresses the duty to care?
Yes, indeed I can, because establishing a baseline of the expectations of what we expect social media platforms to provide in safety by design, in a duty of care, making certain that they are following the law and addressing these self-harms, suicidal ideation, eating disorders, those items that cause kids harm, providing that toolbox to parents and kids so that they can deal with the algorithms. That means these social media platforms have to open those algorithms. And when you talk with teachers and principals and pediatricians, psychiatrists, they will tell you the addictive nature of these algorithms, that dopamine hit that kids get. This is what drives them down rabbit holes. So it's important that we deal with this. It is important that the social media platforms comply with the law. That is why they have to submit to an audit each year.
An annual audit. So these platforms can't just sweep their harmful practices under the rug anymore. I mean, that's huge. For once, they're being forced to open the kitchen and show us how the sausage is made. I mean, right off the bat, it doesn't seem like this bill is about censorship or the content itself. Senator Blumenthal, this feels like a significant shift in how big tech is being handled.
It is a product design bill, meaning there's no censorship, there's no blocking of content. What we're doing here is giving choices to those young people and to their parents about what they actually see and hear. If they want to disconnect from the black box algorithms, that's their choice. And the duty of care is really important because, again, no government censorship. The big tech companies ought to be held accountable. And what we've heard really again and again and again is pleas from parents who've lost children. And one asked us, how many more children have to die before Congress will do something? There's a human dimension here of loss and tragedy that I think is the reason that we had 91 of our colleagues voting for it, only 3 opposed in the Senate. It's the reason why we've had such broad bipartisan support across the ideological and political spectrum. It's the reason why, frankly, Senator Blackburn and I have this very unusual partnership, because we are so dedicated, passionately determined to get this bill done, because it will save lives and it provides not only that duty of care, but also transparency that's so important. So I'm really hopeful we can do this as quickly as possible, but we have some really tough opposition. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Armies of lawyers and lobbyists from the big tech companies, because they have a business model, and it is these kids are the product. They collect information from them, data, which is of great value. Their eyes on the screen for longer periods of time are what generate revenue for them through advertising. So, they have a very entrenched, strong interest in opposing this bill.
The children, you just talked about data, and the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act really was supposed to address that. And as we know, the real-time fallout from real-time innovation and the real actual benchmarks of online success, which is stickiness and time spent online, right? That's something that just changes all the time. And you mentioned, this is a product design bill. Well, the product is the problem here. But I have to think that the genie's out of the bottle. Is that not the case? Do you think this bill can actually address the problems that our kids face?
I think it will. There's a temptation to be oversimplistic here, but I don't need to tell any parent on this call how addictive the internet can be. And I mean that maybe not in a medical, clinical sense, but everybody knows that kids are spending more and more time online, and it is, in effect, depressing them in a lot of ways. Now, it's a good thing. It connects people and communities. It has enormous benefits, but this downside of enhancing, the Surgeon General has talked about an epidemic of loneliness. Well, kids are lonely even though they are on the internet because their self-worth is diminished. They're made to feel badly about their bodies, young women. They're bullied. So, we can talk in very highfalutin terms about an epidemic of loneliness and disconnectedness and so forth. But the internet, as you put it so well, is sicky and sometimes highly addictive. And I think we can do something about it through this bill.
Senator Blackburn, in my hometown in Reading, Connecticut, they're just starting to talk about whether or not this extremely addictive data collecting device that I hold in my hand, which for our listeners is a smartphone, should be allowed into classrooms. I'm curious to hear your follow-up on what Senator Blumenthal just talked about. Is the genie out of the bottle?
I don't think it is. I think that more parents are realizing when their children are online, they are the product. And this is one of the reasons we need the Kids Online Safety Act. And when you talk about schools and classes, now I'm beginning to say no phones during the class day, no phones during the class hour. and requiring children to actually pay attention to what is being taught. The reason that you're hearing this from educators and from school boards is they know that many of the behavioral problems that they encounter during the academic day are caused by what is taking place over that phone. Teachers, classroom teachers, talk about the distracted nature of kids in class because they're looking at the phone and they're texting somebody in the class. Sometimes they're continuing to bully a student in the class, and they want to make certain that those phones are left at the teacher's desk during the day, or either that they're not allowed during the academic day at all. And I had a parent, as we were doing our hearings on this, I had a parent who said to me, Marsha, I always thought when I got my kids home at night, got everybody in the house and the doors locked, we were all pretty much safe from what was going on in the outside world. But during COVID, what she realized was that the enemy was on that phone. And it was the pedophile, it was the drug dealer, or it was cyberbullying, or it was the endless scrolling. And kids right now are spending on average, 8.5 hours a day on their phone. And being able to give parents and kids a tool to help short circuit some of that time they're spending on that phone, it would be helpful for the health of the kids.
So, Senator Blackburn, KOSA has been criticized for giving rise to potential censorship, including material important to marginalized groups and at-risk children. How do you respond to that?
This bill does not have any censorship in it. This bill is content neutral. This bill does not apply to websites that kids may be going to for information. It does not apply to nonprofit groups. So the criticism is not properly placed. It does not, they're talking about things that don't happen in this bill because it does not have censorship.
We have listened. We've listened very closely over the past 3 years to exactly those kinds of criticism. And that's why we have, for example, narrowed and specified the duty of care to apply to specific harms that should attract strong consensus. We've been explicit and definite about those harms in the duty of care to avoid claims of censorship. We've also changed the enforcement provisions so that the potential for abuse by state attorneys general has been, I think, eliminated, much to my chagrin as a former state attorney general. I hated at some level to do it, but I recognize the fears and the concerns. So I think we've been very responsive, and it comes back to product design for an attorney general whose bread and butter was consumer protection. I sued companies that made defective products. This is a defective product. The reason it's a defective product is because the algorithms harm people. Change the algorithms, or at least give people the option to disconnect from them. And so it's not what the algorithms necessarily are driving in terms of content. It's not saying, okay, we're going to leave the algorithms in place. We're going to still require people to be there, but the government's going to come in and say the algorithms can't drive this or that content. We're saying allow people to disconnect from the algorithms. And if a social media company knows or has reason to know that it is causing suicides, for example, it ought to do something about it. It bears a measure of responsibility.
The current design of these algorithms is inherently flawed. They're engineered in a way that exploits users, and that's something we need to address. When I think about the significance of KOSA, I truly believe it parallels the importance of Brown versus Board of Ed. And this isn't just a niche issue. It's a national movement that impacts everyone, just like Brown versus Board of Ed. It wasn't solely about desegregation for children of color. It was about reshaping society to foster integration and mutual understanding across all communities. However, just like Brown versus Board of Ed, which faced challenges in enforcement, KOSA will inevitably encounter its own legal hurdles. We know the legal battles over segregation were fierce, fought by those with the deepest pockets and the most powerful legal teams and the most vicious opinions about de jure versus de facto segregation. Now, we're up against the tech giants, the ones with vast resources and influence like you never saw, worse than the kind of resources that racism in this country has, which is a pretty deep thing too. So the question is, how do we ensure KOSA is effectively enforced given the formidable opposition we'll face from some of the most powerful corporations in the world?
Senator Blackburn and I know well, and I want to express my gratitude to her and all of the supporters of this legislation because they've had to stand up to big tech. But the FTC, which has probably the predominant measure of responsibility, knows how to stand up to big tech. It's doing it right now. It's suing Google in the courts right now. The proceeding is ongoing. It sued Amazon. We're depending on the FTC to do its job. But here's the beauty of this legislation. It gives parents and children an enforcement responsibility too. They have these choices to make. It gives them the tools and the options and the choices when they become empowered, really. So I think that we're making them kind of private attorneys general in a way. They don't have necessarily legal responsibility the way the FTC does, but it gives them more power.
Senator Blackburn?
Yes, it is so important to give parents and kids the ability to do this disconnect. And as Senator Blumenthal has said so well, this is about product design and it is about safety for our kids in that virtual space. And one of the things that came to light during our hearings and also from some of the whistleblowers is the amount of research that the social media platforms themselves have done. They know that they are using kids as a product. They know this is detrimental to their health. But Meta even assigned a dollar value to how much a child is worth to their bottom line when they are online, and then how much they're worth on a year or for a lifetime. And it is so callous that they have looked at exploiting the amount of time that kids have been online, and they have done it knowingly. And yes, indeed, you're exactly right. The armies of lawyers and lobbyists that we have faced over the last 3.5 years. And Senator Blumenthal and I have talked about this because it is these lawyers and lobbyists that go at this. They're trying to keep any regulation at all, if any regulation, from hitting the virtual space. Now, in the physical world, you cannot expose a child to alcohol, tobacco, pornography, but in the virtual space, they can meet people who will sell them alcohol, tobacco, who will sell them pornography, who will push them into pornography. You can't take a child to a strip club, but they can be exposed to that in the virtual space. See, there are laws in the physical space that prevent those activities. In the virtual space, there is nothing that protects kids. I've got teenage grandsons that are 15 and 16. What they are exposed to on the internet, because it is there on these social media platforms 24/7, 365. And for parents, it is an everyday struggle trying to help protect their children from some of this in the virtual space.
Well, you're 1,000% right. I mean, we have to literally peel my son off his devices every day. I mean, it's an incredible lure. Given that this bill passed with overwhelming bipartisan support in the Senate and now moves to the House, what would you say to listeners who want to take action and help ensure that the Kids Online Safety Act actually becomes law?
I think it's so important for parents who hear this. This bill had 72 co-sponsors in the Senate. And as Senator Blumenthal said, it was a 91-3 vote. And now the attention is on the House of Representatives. And anyone who is listening and watching this podcast, they should call their member of the House and ask them to please support the Kids Online Safety Act.
Senator Blackburn just hit it right on the head. And we are counting on the heroes in this story, the parents and the young people who have been the most effective, strongest, most eloquent, and most courageous advocates to bring it across the finish line in the House, whether it's in the next few weeks or the next couple of months before the end of this session, at the end of the year, after the election. We think this bill is an idea whose time has come. And really appreciate your giving us the opportunity to talk about it. People should contact their congressman or congresswoman and say, do KOSA, do the Kids Online Safety Act.
Well, that's so important. We can't thank you enough. I mean, we've had people on our show who have their children have died by suicide because of the things that they've encountered online. And many of them have testified in front of your committee. So thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks, or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Visit USAA.com/bundle.
Bundle savings are off total premium, not available in all states or in all situations. To qualify, auto policy must be active prior to property policy issue, subject to change. Restrictions apply. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
With a major selection of the looks your kiddos love starting at just $4 in the Walmart app, a new school year means a stylish new them. Who knew? Find skater skirts and Crocs that say, I'm casual but cool. Sparkly sneakers that say, it's my classroom, you're just learning in it. And preppy polos that say, I'm the teacher's pet, even if they're mommy's menace at home. Find their favorite styles starting at just $4 in the app. The Walmart you thought you knew is now new.
So let's break it down. KOSA, or the Kids Online Safety Act, is really about one thing: protecting children in a world where they're being treated as products.
Yeah. And big tech has designed platforms to keep children glued to their screens, feeding them, I mean, there's no other way to put it, harmful content. In the process, it's all about maximizing profit because the longer kids stay online, the more data is collected, the more ads are sold, and the more money these companies make. They're making it sticky, but they're making it sticky with really nasty stuff.
And that's where KOSA comes in. Unlike what its critics are saying, it's not about censorship. No one's trying to block content. It's about transparency and giving families the tools they need to take control. Senators Blackburn and Blumenthal are pushing for social media platforms to open up their algorithms so parents and kids can finally make informed choices.
What's really striking is how bipartisan this effort is. The Senate vote was 91-3. That's huge. You got it, Republicans and Democrats like Senators Blackburn and Blumenthal coming together because they see the real harm these platforms are causing children.
And let's not forget, schools are starting to take action too. More and more schools are banning smartphones during the day because they're seeing the impact on students' attention and behavior.
Sure. But as the senators pointed out, big tech isn't going down without a fight. They've got armies of lawyers and lobbyists pushing back because this bill could disrupt their business model.
KOSA isn't law yet. It's made its way through the Senate, but now it's up to the House. If you're a parent, an educator, or just someone who believes kids deserve a safe space online, now's the time to call your representative and tell them to support the Kids Online Safety Act.
All right, think of it this way. In the real world, we have laws protecting children from things like alcohol, guns, right? Even pornography. But online, it's a free-for-all. KOSA is trying to close that gap.
The reality is we're at a tipping point. We've seen how big tech has shaped the world our kids are growing up in, often to their detriment. KOSA is an attempt to shift the power to give parents and kids a fighting chance in an online landscape that's going to become more dangerous than we ever imagined. Will it solve everything? No. But maybe it's the start of something better. Maybe it's how we begin to say, enough is enough.
And now it's time for our tinfoil swan.
Our paranoid takeaway to keep you safe on and offline.
Indeed.
Wait, Travis, where were you earlier? I thought you were AWOL for the interview.
I was writing my memoirs.
I love it.
Okay, well, I cannot wait to read them. I'm glad you're back because we need you, buddy.
Yes. So we've been looking at the Kids Online Safety Act this week, and because of it, Instagram started rolling out new privacy settings for teens. Maybe.
Sort of. Travis, why don't you explain what happened?
Sure. Basically, any new or existing accounts for users under 18 will default to private, and that means that only approved followers can see or interact with their posts. Also, no notifications after 10 p.m. for teens, and they're restricting sensitive content like nudity or discussions of self-harm.
Maybe they'll stop sending notifications to me after 10 o'clock at night, too.
It's like a career thief saying that they're no longer going to steal stuff when they're in prison, which they probably are. So it's a PR move, 100%. Instagram's trying to cover its tracks before lawmakers come down on them even harder. So, all right, let's play that game. How much will this actually change anything?
I have no idea if it's going to change anything. I mean, obviously there's some connection with KOSA, but that's the point. Instagram's changes supposedly give parents more control, like you're able to monitor your account activity, limit screen time, see who their kids are messaging. Arguably, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah. Or it's a step in covering their own liability. Again. I mean, what's to stop kids from lying about their age? Whatever, creating fake accounts, dodging those parental controls.
Yeah, I mean, there's always a step stool to the cookie jar for kids. So
here's what it means for anyone using Instagram. If you're a teen, or you've got one at home, I'm about to, those privacy settings are going to be harder to change without parental approval. And Instagram's going to limit a lot of the content teens can see by default. Again, maybe.
Yeah, it's not perfect. It really isn't, but it's like locking the front door. It won't stop someone from coming in the back window, but it makes you a tougher target.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Locks are for honest people, right? Any criminal's going to want to get around, and all children on one level or another are a criminal.
Look, even if kids are dodging some of the rules, and we know that's like a cottage industry for them, this is an opportunity for parents to speak with kids, let them know why Instagram's defaulting them to private. It's kind of a nudge to stay safer online.
Yeah, I mean, no, listen, I'm going to ask something, and please don't think that means I'm actually concerned.
Noted.
What about influencers? That's an issue for them, probably.
Well, that's a tricky part. I mean, Instagram's letting 16 and 17-year-olds make their profiles public if they choose, but anyone under 16 got to get the approval of their parents to change those settings.
Yeah, and having your parents being able to see your DMs kind of takes some of the luster off of the platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an invitation for a bunch of pageant moms and dads to go to town with their kids.
Sure, but in the meantime, parents and teens should make the most of these changes. Keep an eye on what's happening. Don't click, on shady links and stay smart about who you're letting into your digital life.
Or just kind of spitballing here, you could just not let your kids onto social media. If you want to give them a phone, don't give them a smartphone. Give them a flip phone.
Yeah, you do that. That might be not the easiest thing for most people to do.
It's really not in my household. At the end of the day, look, even if Instagram is just playing defense, why not use the tools they're giving you?
Fine. No, I think that's cool. Lock the doors, shut the windows. You're not safe just because Instagram says you are.
Very uplifting.
And that's our tinfoil swan.
What the Heck with Adam Levin is a production of Loud Tree Media. You can find us online at adamlevin.com and on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Adam K. Levin.
Behind every empire are the people history tried to forget. Lost Roman Heroes tells the stories of the remarkable characters who shaped Rome from its mythical beginnings to its final fall.
Each episode blends armchair storytelling, sharp historical insight, and a bit of humor to bring these lost figures to life. From generals to scientists, from rebels to empresses, from priests to politicians, these lost Roman heroes have one thing in common.
They stood up for civilization when the bad guys threatened, and in doing so, they changed the course of human history. If you're into history that's vivid, surprising, and deeply human, this show's for you.
Behind every great meal is a person with a story to tell. Hear them on Culinary Characters Unlocked, the podcast that reveals the lives behind the food. Hosted by me, David Page, Emmy Award-winning journalist and creator of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, as I talk with everyone from culinary legends to mom-and-pop standouts about the creativity, grit, and passion that shape the food we love. Follow Culinary Characters Unlocked on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.